Welcome to the Shifting People podcast, where we go deep into the weeds with leaders on the front lines of people management in the service industry. We interview the best minds in HR and talent acquisition, along with owner-operators, franchisees, and general managers to bring you real insights that you can actually apply in your business today. I'm your co-host, Derek Williamson.
And I'm Kathleen McDonough, and it's time to get to work. Today we have Marisa Garcia, Vice President of Culture at P. Terry's Burger Stand. And 2-for-1 today, we have Kelly Cockrell, Director of Training and Development at P. Terry's Burger Stand. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
Yeah, we're so
Excited for
happy
this.
to have you.
I think you're our first tandem guests as well, if I'm not mistaken. So this will be exciting. But when we spoke with both of you, it was apparent, well, okay, this doesn't make sense because you both have such a great story as well. So it made sense to have you both on as well. So really excited for this.
Yeah, me too. And so let's start with maybe Marisa. Could you tell us a little bit about your past and yourself? And then we'll move on to Kelly after that.
Sure. I started in the hospitality industry as a 16-year-old. I had been exposed to it through a very dear friend's father, who was the head of hotel chains. And so I thought it was a very glamorous job. And my first job was at the Holiday Inn in Corpus Christi, which was not the Four Seasons, but anyway, and I got hooked on it. And so I've been doing on and off in the hospitality restaurants since then. I was fortunate enough to really, what I say, grow up with first Pepsi International brands out of Mexico. I've worked in Mexico, and then in the US with Yum Brands International, and then also just as part of the whole Yum Brands umbrella. And so worked with some very smart people, probably the top talent in the industry, and learned a lot, continued to really love it, went from training into HR when I was with them, and then continued my career in the HR brand. And then I came to P. Terry's 5 years ago. I saw the job posted and I called everybody I knew to make sure that whoever was doing the hiring got to see my resume so that I could at least get an interview. And met the CEO, who was the CEO at the time, and we just really hit it off and really hit it off with Patrick and Kathy. And so I was fortunate enough that they brought me on.
Amazing. And we'll get into Kelly in just a second. But one thing you mentioned there, what was it that stood out about P. Terry's that made you want to call everyone that worked there to get your resume in front of them?
I was around when they first opened, right? And the food, of course, is amazing. It's all natural food. It's the best burger and fries out there, honestly. And the culture too. The Terry's are very well known as to how they methodically thought about opening their first restaurant. Kathy read books and books about how not to do things, right? How not to treat your employees. Said, we can't do this alone. We have to make sure we have people and that we treat them well. And I think with them working side by side with the employees at the first location and then again at the second location, they realized how hard their team worked for them. And so they wanted to make sure that they were giving back and that they were supporting them. And so that reputation has been around since 2005. And I always admired them. And so really it was that I wanted to come work for a brand that I knew really treated people with respect and kindness.
Amazing. Yeah, that those are the brands I seek out as well. I think it's a good thing to look for in a brand. And for people that didn't know about P. Terry's, I'm so glad that you were able to share that. And for us that didn't know about the myth and the lore of it. And Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, and then what you do at P. Terry's as well.
Sure. Mine start in the hospitality industry is gonna age me a little bit. So I used to love the TV program Hotel when I was growing up in high school, and I thought, oh my God, that's such an amazing job. I'm gonna go, and then I went to school for hotel restaurant management major based off a TV show, and worked in the hospitality industry straight out of college at Boston Chicken back in the day before it was Boston Market. Opened up probably 40 of their restaurants in Texas, and kind of transitioned out of there and worked in the pizza industry for a little bit. And Yum Brands International is where actually Marisa and I met. We worked together for 8 years there. And I have to say, Marisa talking about working with smart people, I think as a leader and growing in the restaurant industry, any time you can surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, you're in a winning situation. You're going to learn so much from them. Yum Brands also did a great job of hiring and recruiting and having just Marisa said, some of the smartest people in the industry kind of leading them. And so as I was a young person growing up, I had great mentors there that just taught me a lot, not only about operations in a restaurant, but holistically the restaurant industry, from site selection to supply chain to things that you normally don't even think about. Transitioned out of Yum, left the hospitality industry for a little while to work more without less travel, and then circled back last year. Marisa called me and was like, hey, I need some help implementing an LMS. Can you come join us at P. Terry's for a little bit? Of course, I've worked on and off with Marisa over my entire career, helping out a little bit here and there as a contractor, and then full-time for different organizations as well. And P. Terry's is I have to ditto her on just the amazing organization and how much the Terrys really care about their crew. They do things that most companies don't do for their employees. And I was just taken aback, not only from the support from the new store opening process, but the processes and the tools that they have in place to help their employees feel part of a team. One thing that's super small that I was amazed at is that every crew member at the home office or in the field get a birthday cake delivered to them on their birthday. So we're going to deliver over 1,600 birthday cakes this year to every employee that works for us. And then when you're in the stands, everybody sings you happy birthday. So it's not, hey, we're going to go and do like every month, we're going to celebrate the team's birthday. It's you get to pick out your flavor. We're going to get you your flavor and you're going to love on it. So it's just, that's not an easy thing to do, but it's so important to recognize the individuality and a way to say thank you to our crews.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like a lot of companies get to 30 employees and go, oh, this is too much. We're just going to do the birthday month thing, right? And everyone has one cake and one party. But obviously, that was just very important for them to maintain as they grew, which is really a testament to the culture as well. Really unique one. I do want to touch on, maybe Marisa, if you want to speak to it a little bit, just this sort of shared history that you and Kelly have, almost this partnership. You've come along with each other to you've done multiple tours together now. And I would love if you could just elaborate a little on that working relationship, right? I think a lot of folks, you've moved on to a new role, and yes, you had some great coworkers in the past, but it's really an extra step to say, hey, I really want to work with this person again, and I want to bring them over. So I'd love if you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, I think Kelly and I started working together at Yum. And so I was doing training at the time, and I was focusing more on the restaurant level training. So general managers through area managers, that kind of level. And then Kelly was really doing leadership development. So franchise owners, CEOs, directors, that kind of stuff. And so we worked a lot together on just making sure that the messages were consistent. One of the things that Yum did, which is pretty amazing, is if you wanted to become a VP of another function, you had to work in operations. And so you would maybe be a director that they were looking to say, okay, we really want you to maybe you're a director of finance, but we really want to make you a VP of HR, let's say. You had to go and work in the restaurants. You had to go be a general manager for a certain amount of time. And so it was really important that what Kelly was teaching and what we were training at the stands was aligned, right? So we worked really close together. Kelly is one of the best training development people that I've ever met. incredibly creative. She's very realistic about it. She knows how to build those relationships with operations, which are critical, or even with the subject matter experts or the people that the stakeholders that have requested the training. And so I've always, she's always helped and supported me. There's been many times that I've called her and said, oh my God, I'm in Australia and our package didn't arrive. Can you email me the document in a way that I can print them, whatever. And so there's been many times that she has helped. And so it's always just been a natural for me to reach out to her in the different brands that I worked in that did not have a training development team. And at first, a couple times she worked as a contractor because we just didn't have the money to hire somebody. And then when I worked at Torchy's, we were trying to build training and build that foundation because we were building anywhere from 6 to 12 restaurants a year, and that we needed that infrastructure. And she was my first thought. And so I dragged her to Austin, to Dallas, and she worked with me at Torchy's. And then, so it was just a natural piece that here at P. Terry's, we did get to that point where, okay, we need a learning management system. We need to make sure that we're building that foundation. We started doing our shift leader development, but in order to really grow, we just needed to enhance it, make it better. And so it was just a natural for me to call her and drag her back.
Yeah, I love that. You find someone that, especially you mentioned like how these sort of like little crises, right? And that's usually like the test of, okay, we could really work together when there's something stressful. And you're like, I know Kelly's got me, right? And so I would love to jump into I want to talk about how you arrived at the point of needing an LMS. And there's an interesting point when you're scaling of, you don't want to over process and bury people in that, but like you reach a natural point. But before we get to that, I do want to just kind of ask you, Marisa, a little bit more, because you were, I believe, the first HR hire in the organization. Is that correct?
And they had sort of somebody that was doing kind of payroll and just the basic HR stuff. And she was doing a great job. What they were doing, what they could manage at the time. But yes, I was the first HR professional that was hired. And so that when I came on, there was a lot of paper happening. There was a lot of back and forth between the restaurants and HR around just employee files and paperwork and I-9s and just all that craziness. We had a payroll system that just was not working for us. It was expensive, wasn't scalable. And so when I met with the CEO, he asked me, I said, what do you want me to do in the first 90 days? What is it you want me to do? And he's, the first 2 weeks, I need you to write us a handbook. I was like, all right, I got that. And then he said, I need you to assess whether or not the payroll company is the right payroll company. And so that was part of me coming in was, okay, where are we on the compliance side, right? That's the most important piece first, right? You have to really look at that. One of the things that I truly believe in, and that I was told once a long time ago, was you have to let the culture guide you on how you do things. So it's really sitting back and understanding the culture, how people work together, how they talk. Is it very corporate? Is it very buttoned up? Or is it more relaxed environment? And so coming in, I really would just go to meetings and I did driver longs with the operations team to see the restaurants and see how they interacted with the restaurants, and sat through meetings and just listened in, even meetings that didn't apply to me. I just wanted to see how people interacted and how the cross-functional teams work. I did write the handbook within the first 2 weeks because we needed a handbook. And then what you find along the way that there's policies that you need that you may not have, policies that haven't really been communicated in writing and things like that. And it can be a difficult transition because people all of a sudden start seeing these policies being published. And so you have to be very careful to explain, I'm not asking you to memorize or read all these, right? We need them in order for us to be protected and for us to protect the employees so that people understand those guardrails, right? The white lines that you can operate within. Some white lines are very wide apart, right? Guest service, you can operate in a very wide margin as long as you're not giving away the farm. You can depends on how can you make that guest happy, right? It's going to be broader. But when it comes to anti-harassment, their white lines are on top of each other, right? We have a zero tolerance policy. These are your guardrails, right? And so you have to be very careful though, when you bring those on and you create those, on how you communicate them to the field, so they don't start to have that feeling of it's very corporate. And it did happen here, right? It's just natural for people to be, Marisa's coming in and creating all these policies. No, I'm just really documenting the policies that are already in place, kind of thing. And so we did that. And then you just sit back and really assess, okay, what is it that we need? What is it the people need? It's a very small team here at the home office. Patrick wants to keep the GNI very low. And so we have people that are very smart, super capable, high capacity for output. And so it's just sitting back and assessing, are they in the right seat, and making sure that you have that team that can scale and grow and do the things that we need to do. And so a lot of it at first is just putting in those processes to make life easier for the general managers. We stopped the paperwork. We just moved on. We got a new payroll system, and we moved onboarding so that it was online. So there's no back and forth on paper. We trained the managers on how to do I-9, so we didn't have to do the back and forth on I-9. And so a lot of that was just that first year was just really getting that going, along with all the other culture pieces. We did culture surveys once a year to make sure that we hear from our teams. We also we're trying to use the payroll system as a communication tool that we could get messages out to the team. It's only one-sided, but at least we could get messages out to them to try to start communicating. And so as you kind of get into that, then the fun starts, right? Then once you've gotten all the compliance and all the payroll stuff and all that, then the fun things start, right? How can we enhance the benefits? How can we just make things that you have a little bit better? Or maybe people didn't even know we had that benefit. So how do we communicate it to our crew so they understand that we have interest-free loans, that in case you get stuck and you need an emergency, we can get you a check by the end of the week if you need that? Or how do we look at our medical benefits, and are they the right benefits for the team now and moving forward, right? What is our age of our crew and what's important to them, kind of thing. So that's when the fun starts, right? Because you get to bring those things in that are a little bit, just an enhancement really to the culture.
Yeah, and that make people's lives better and whatnot. I was actually going to ask if you can pinpoint one thing. You mentioned putting processes in place to make life easier for general managers. Is there anything you remember specifically that general managers came to you and they were like, "Oh wow, thank God you put this in place. This is amazing," or that like really moved the needle for them in their day to day?
Yeah, I think it was putting the onboarding on into the HRIS system, so that they could just sit in their office and finish it and not have to do the paperwork back and forth, and then the approval that all the forms were filled out. That was one. And then the other one was the hours, the way that the hours were feeding in or were not feeding in from the POS into payroll. So it was all manual. And when we finally worked with the IT team and the payroll company to have those hours come in directly from the POS, you would have thought that we had struck gold. I mean, because now the managers were only having to make sure the hours were correct in the system. They weren't having to export and do all this extra work. And so it really streamlined our payroll system. So I think those would be two of the pieces that really helped a lot.
That's amazing. And they sound like huge improvements. And I know sometimes for managers, it seems like not a lot because it's just a little bit of time savings. That's huge when it comes to your day-to-day work life and the struggle of the paper and whatnot. That's amazing. Those are great examples. And I know Derek wanted to ask about then moving to how do you know you're ready for an LMS and whatnot? And so I guess that's probably the next big thing, that now getting the LMS in place that is going to even more so improve their lives, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, we now have 38 restaurants. We're not just in Austin anymore, right? And so we can't be at a restaurant in 30 minutes and 20 minutes, right? We have to go to Houston for something, and And we were also, as you grow, you want to make sure your systems are being followed. The way that we make burgers are the same across the board, or the fries, how we soak the fries. We're very meticulous in how we do things. And so we wanted to make sure that's scalable. And the only way to do that is through consistent training. And in order to do that, you have to have trainers that are trained, but then you have to have a mechanism that they are getting the messages the same way. And the best way to do that is through online learning with that blended approach of hands-on training. And we also wanted a mechanism where we could communicate better with the whole company, because a lot of times we send messages to the general managers, and then they have to then spread it to their restaurants. And sometimes it can be hard because you may have an employee that only works 1 day a week, right? And then you think you've talked to everybody, and then you're like, oh, wait, I forgot that one person. And that one person is the one that's going to get confronted with that situation, right? Is the way that it works. And so we wanted not only that mechanism, and then because we have a very small training team, I didn't want to bring in a bunch of developers that were just developing classes, because you know how hard it is to pull people out of restaurants, and operators cannot sit for 8 hours to learn certain things. So that's when we started really thinking about the LMS. And that's when I called Kelly, because Kelly has implemented more LMSs than I can name. And she's also done it and been amazing at it. And so it was just a natural for me to call her and say, okay, we're doing an RFP process for an LMS. I need your help.
Yeah. So Kelly, that tees you up nicely. Like, how did you think of, or how are you thinking about this as you're wrapping your head around, like, P-Terry is a very different culture than you've seen, everything from the big enterprise scale to many things in between. So how do you approach something like this? How do you think about selecting the right thing for this company at this stage, at this size? What are you thinking about? How do you think that through?
I think anytime you go into an RFP with a vendor, it's really important to understand what the end results you need and what that needs to look like, and be really specific in your RFP. I think sometimes when you're getting information back from vendors, it's a yes and as opposed to a no but. You know what I mean? The system really doesn't do this, but they'll say yes and then give you a long explanation about what that workaround may be. So really understanding of, especially for the restaurant industry, what does that hierarchy look like in the system? How is it going to integrate with your payroll system? What are the limitations? What are the permissionings? When you're asking for a demo, I think one thing that we did through this RFP process is we gave all of the vendors a very specific script. Here's how we're planning on setting up our systems. You need to demonstrate what we need as the end result and not what highlight comes from your system. So we knew how we were going to build out our MIT program. So I need you to build out that MIT program in your system. I know how we need to report the information, so I need you to show me that reporting. And so when we went through the demos, they were probably longer than most demos. I think our demo lasted about 2 hours as opposed to like 45 minutes and then Q&A. But we really wanted to see how the systems worked in the environment that we wanted to work on. And so from just an RFP process, I think that's really important. And I also think, does the system that you're selecting support your philosophy about learning? And I think that's probably very key as well. So for me, I really have you should be able to learn anytime, anywhere, anything that you want to learn as a learner. Not only how you do your job, which is key from an operation standpoint, but how can we as an employer make you a more holistic person? So can we provide you wellness training? And in addition to leadership and management training, can we provide you training on life skills? And so we want a system that can provide enriching the whole person, not just and important for us. You need to be a really good crew member. You need to be a really good general manager. But if you want to be a better person, if you want to learn how to cook healthy, if you want to learn how to do yoga, if you want to learn how to do financial planning and plan for your future or balance a checkbook, we want to be able to provide that to you, because we want you not only to be happy and trained when you come to work, but becoming a better person holistically. And so when we're picking systems, we're looking at everything like that, and not just how well are you going to train my employee in the stand, but how well are you going to provide access to learning so they can grow in other parts of their lives that are important to them.
Yeah, which is huge and a huge and ambitious undertaking, but it sounds just from what we've heard from that is really driven by the overall culture, by what the ownership, what by the whole company really believes in, right? Lots of companies, an LMS would just be just the training materials, right? Just operations, very kind of rigid. But it sounds like you touched on some really interesting things. One of which is just having, before you go into exploring vendors, I feel like a lot of folks, if they're doing this for the first time, would totally do that the opposite way and potentially go in a totally wrong direction for their company because they're letting the vendor dictate this is the design of it. Whereas you did something really critical, which was design it first and then go to market and say, this is actually how we want to do it. Can you do this? Show us exactly how you would do this, which I think is just such an important call out for folks that are in that growth. Really applies to any technology too, not just an LMS. But it does sound like, I just want to double click on the philosophy of the company part and how, and maybe I'll go to Kelly and then Marisa, if you want to jump in on the overall culture side. But there's a really interesting piece there, which is, it sounds like that was very important, that you wanted to have a much more comprehensive, like, it's not just learning about the job, it's much, much bigger than that. So I would love if you could speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think what we do on a monthly basis here is we highlight training when you're on the landing page. We do some management skills around, maybe it's accountability one month and maybe financial wellness another month. And then we have things around health and wellness. And then, so every month you're getting a rotating 10 classes that you can take at your own time. We also don't geofence our learning, right? We have really important conversations with our management staff and go, hey, if we're assigning training to people, they need to take it at the stands. They need to get paid for their training. But for all the rest of the training, for, hey, I want to go and learn how to speak Spanish, or I want to go learn how to do financial planning. I want to learn what is a 401k and what does that really mean to me. I want to do that at home on my own. Then we need to be able to give people access to that. So the system's got to accommodate. Can we geofence some information because we want people to get paid and be able to do this other thing? Also, you can go into our system, and if I want to see what it takes to be a general manager training, I can go look at it to the future to see how I need to grow. And so we're not saying you live in this lane and you can only get this training and you can only see this training. Our training's open up to everybody, and you can explore anything that you want, anytime that you want. I think that shows a belief that we're going to do the right thing for our teams in the stands and help them get wherever they want to go. Our promotion rate here is incredible, from crew member to general manager. I think we ran the numbers, and if 50%, no, I think it's 80% of our general managers came from a crew.
Yeah.
And so for us to be able to, as we're building systems, we have to have systems that allow that growth to continue. And that was a huge part of selecting the LMS. And I think for anytime you're implementing an LMS, there's some things that you can do. Once you've selected it, how do you get your teams involved? And, we did preview road shows with general managers, shift leads, area managers, the home office, and here's what it's going to look like, and here's what it's going to be able to do. What else would you want it to do? How else can we make it better for you? And to ask those key questions. We did fun things like, we didn't come up with a name. We had a contest, and everybody submitted names, and then we had a company vote on it, and then we did a big production where the person got a painting, got a prize and a plaque, and we recognized them in an all-company meeting for coming up with a name. We designed the logo around their choice, and we gave them a hat with a logo, and we do fun things like that. to get the people involved. So it's not us driving the process. It's, hey, we're involving you from the get-go, and how can we bring you in?
Yeah, I love that. And Marisa, if you could sprinkle a little on there, just in terms of, I think, how the culture guides these kind of things, right? Because you've obviously had a major role, and it sounds like there was a culture when you came in that is what drew you to it, but then there's a sort of shaping and continual defining of the culture. If you could add any thoughts on that.
I think that as a brand and with the Terrys, because they have always supported their crew, right? That is their number one goal, is to support their crew and to help them in however they're coming to us, right? And the restaurant business, you have people that come to you because it's just a part-time job. My dad told me I have to pay my own gas, right? And so I have to get a job. And then you got the people that it's their second job. And then you have people that don't really see it as a career or how much you can do. I was one of those people. I knew that when you went to work in a restaurant, you worked in a restaurant, right? You served food, you handled the gas, whatever. And it really wasn't until I went to work for Chili's that all of a sudden you realize, wait, there's a huge corporate office. And you can actually go into other functions and other roles and all that. And so we want to make sure that because we have such a high rate of internal promotions, we want to be able to show people that picture, right? So if you want to come into the home office, we have somebody here that started as a crew member, didn't speak Spanish, and now she is in our accounting team. She's a staff accountant. And she became a general manager, she became an area manager, and then moved to the home office. And we've got our VP of operations started as a crew member. And so we want people to see that. And so in order to do that, you have to train them and support them and give them the tools that they need and make sure they understand that they're being supported, right? And as you grow, the only way really to communicate through that is through a system, right? That is the same for everybody, if that makes sense. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it was really helpful to zoom that out as well, because I think it's really helpful to see whenever we speak with folks who are in organizations where there's a clear culture that has informed things. That's what we like to draw out a little bit more, right? Because we assume that there's some folks who are listening in that are at many different stages of their growth, and I think it's always helpful. I wonder, there's an interesting tandem here, obviously. So you and Kelly work really well together, work really closely. And Marisa, I'm wondering if you could shed some light on just the importance of that partnership, right? Traditionally, HR roles, and even if you want to talk about your role, your title is distinctly not director of HR, but VP of culture. So if you want to add a little there, but it's very easy for HR to be siloed and learning and development to be siloed and operations is siloed. But would love if you could elaborate a little on just the importance of that partnership and collaboration.
Yeah. So on the title change, I came in as a director of HR. I got promoted to vice president by the CEO. But when I first came on, CEO, sorry. When I first came on, it was HR. And to me, some people can have a very negative feeling about HR, right? Depends on your experience, where you came from. I know as a function, we all collectively in HR try really hard to make it a function that you are human and a resource, right? And so trying to help people. So I went to the CEO and I said, I don't want to be HR. I want to be culture. My job, you told me that when I was hired, that my job is to grow and protect the brand and protect the culture. And so if my job is to protect the culture, then I should be called the culture, not HR. And so that's when we did that change, right? And it really went to that this is all encompassing around our culture. It's all about our people, right? Our number one resource. Everybody knows that if you take care of your crew, they're going to take care of your guests. So we have to make sure we're protecting that, how people are working, and that we're living the values of the Terrys. That is what my job is, right? Basically. And so we kind of did that. And then it's really important that in my team is that we are partners with operations and the other functions, right? But the partnership between operations, training, and culture have to be aligned and you have to be a team. And yes, you are going to disagree. You are going to want to approach things a little bit differently. Sometimes it's that compromise, right? It's that, okay, I see what you want, but I can't do that because it's not going to work in the system, or it's not going to work this way. But if you're not aligned and you're not working together and you're not working at the same pace together, then there's going to be cracks. And then those cracks are going to make things fail and not work. And so the reason that I drag Kelly along with me whenever I can and whenever she'll let me is I trust her 100%. And I know that she truly believes in the partnership between operations and my team and her team is critical. She also knows me really well, and she can tell people, hey, Marisa's not going to like that, so don't ask. Or she also knows how far to push me, and we balance each other, right? Sometimes she tells me you're mean, and she gets to be the nice person. But so I think that partnership around, hey, we have to make sure that we're teaching people things that are going to help enhance their career, but we have to do it within the guidelines of how we treat people, how we want people to feel when they leave work at the end of the day, right? How people feel on Sunday night tells you a lot about the culture of a company. If people Sunday night is just another night and they're going to bed and they're not really thinking about it, then you know that they like what they're doing. They like the company they're working for. If they're dreading Sunday nights, that's a problem. And so I also truly believe that employees never forget the leaders who gave them a chance. And so because of that, we're hiring them, but then we also want them to be supported throughout their career with the brand. And that's where training and operations working together is so critical.
Yeah, and thank you for elaborating. And it makes me think of a question for Kelly, just as we even think about going back to the LMS implementation and the philosophy there. Having just heard Marisa elaborating on just how you think about culture and how you think about that partnership, Kelly, I wonder how, when implementing something like this LMS, how do you define success with something like this?
There's regular KPIs that you can measure, from usage and time in the LMS and things like that. Generally, what I try to do, besides setting up the KPIs, we've set up a scorecard for us to measure at the end of the year how successful it was around usage and deployment and time for people becoming onboarded in the system. So there are regular KPIs. But I think also it's important for me to get feedback from our operations team on a regular basis and see what their pain points are, what's working and what's not working. Are we giving them the reports they need? Can we set up scorecards for them, based on what they're needing for things like that? And the way that we kind of bridge that let me get real life feedback from real life people is through our advisory committee that we have called FRIES, and it stands for Future Readiness and Employee Success. We just go by FRIES though. And we meet every 4 to 6 weeks with our operations partners. We have general managers, area managers, our field training teams on there. We have our director of operations sits and is the voice of veto when we can't agree on anything. And we send things out to that team 2 or 3 weeks in advance about projects that we're working on or things that we're working on. And hey, will this work for you? And what does success look like? And what do you want the end result to be? And so then they come back to us and go, hey, this isn't going to work for us, and here's why. Can we make these changes? And so they're just part of that process, and getting in front of them first before we're doing anything, so they have some expectations about what that's going to look like before we rolled out, like our training checklists. Can you execute this? Can you execute? How is it going to impact your labor? Because I can create, people were like, we can't have people taking training for 5 hours before they even hit anything. I'm like, no, that's not what we're going to build here. We're going to build short little YouTube videos on how to do your job. And then we're going to get them side by side and get them ready. and making sure that they understood that they're like, what's going to work for us and what's not. And so I think that's for us is key, how we're measuring our success, how well received it is when you're in the stands. We provided a lot of support for our field training managers going in, and like having 1,600 people download an app, that's an undertaking. And like, how do you, like, we provided QR codes to make it less painful on them, and they'll scan a QR code, and how well. So there's little things that you can do like that. I think from an organizational, defining those KPIs is key. But I think really being with your teams and getting feedback. And even though our training team is small, we had our 2 field training teams within the first 3 weeks of deployment in every single one of our stands, helping the employees download the apps, showing them how to log in, select their language preferences, making sure that they were getting their training assigned to them in either English or Spanish, however they wanted to hear it. And then getting, every time we're in the stands, going, hey, how's that working for you? What's that like? What are your pain points? And then bringing it back into our team meetings and like making tweaks along the way.
There's like a theme there with kind of everything it seems like you guys do, that like community and culture is huge, but then the way you do it is very important. It's detailed, intentional, and there's so much thought that goes into it. That's amazing. And I'm a huge fan of the FRIES committee. I love the acronym. I love the meaning of it. I love all of it. And pivoting a little bit, but I needed to bring it up because I want people to learn to know more about it. But you guys are also very involved in the community as an organization. Can you, maybe Kelly can start off explaining a little bit about that, and then Marisa can come in on it and add details as well?
Yeah. So every quarter we do a give back day in the communities that we serve. So we pick one organization in the San Antonio Metroplex, one in the Houston Metroplex, and one in the Austin Metroplex. And all of our profits from that, it's a Saturday, it's not a Monday, so it's our biggest sales day, go to that organization. And Ops loves it. We send messaging to our teams to let them know what that organization is about, and how, if they need help from those types of organizations, how that they can participate in that. We just think that's such a huge, important part of our culture. The community that we serve make us successful as an organization, and giving back to them is key. And I know that Kathy and Marisa go out once a year and select those organizations at the start, and to make sure that we have a plan in place and the operations teams knows when it's going to happen. And we hype it up in the communities, on social media, on LinkedIn, and at the stands, to make sure that that our community knows that they're going on.
Yeah, and the organizations that we select are organizations that our employees may struggle with, right? So it could be food insecurity, it could be housing support, it could be mental health things. So we're very careful in picking those organizations, because we want our team to be able to use those resources, right? And so people apply via online, and then Kathy goes through the list, and then we select the organizations that are, and we try to do local organizations. We have selected sometimes big organizations, but it'll be for the market, for the office or the market that we're in. But usually we select organizations that are specific to the cities that we're in. We just started in Houston, and so getting that information out to the different areas is something that we work hard to do. Our next one is June 6th. So for all of you, put that on your calendar. But last quarter, we donated over $68,000, which was our biggest give back day to date. So it's really great with that. Our give back day is only a few days away on June 6th. And this month, we will be giving to Hungry Souls in Austin, Child Safe in San Antonio, and East Bend Human Needs Ministry in Houston. So come on out on Saturday, have the best burger, amazing fries, and a s'mores shake, and support your local charities. The other thing that Patrick came in one day and he said, I want to feed the TSA workers. And so we sent our food truck out there to feed them a couple days just to make sure. We've done that for other situations where we wanted to support and help. Unfortunately, we had those floods in Texas last year that just devastated the hill country. And we decided that we were going to give the profits for a Thursday, and Patrick announced it on Monday, and the community was incredible. How they came out and supported, the amount of time they sat in line waiting for us to feed them, to the point that we ran out of food and we were turning people away because we had no food left and they were trying to give us money anyway. So, the community's been great. That's a passion of Patrick and Kathy's, is the community comes and supports us. So we need to support the community. So yeah, those are some culture initiatives that they're fun, right? They're fun. And it's also selfishly for me, I get to go around and learn about organizations that sometimes I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, that even just doubles down on what Kathleen had just said too, right? Just another example of the intentionality and having culture really drive that involvement in those initiatives, right? I think a lot of organizations see that as a marketing function, and you often see, in my past, I was part of a chain where there was a nonprofit charity partner, but it was never clear how that really aligned with our organization. Yeah, there's a good cause, there often is, but that real intentionality is just, I think, a really good theme throughout. And it's been we're really thankful for both of you and your time really highlighting that, because I think that's definitely one of the biggest takeaways that I'm getting. But our time has blown through. That is the challenge when we have two guests and we want to hear from both of you, and that both of you are just have so much knowledge. So I really thank you both for all of your time on this. It's been a really incredible episode. So thank you.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah, and we'll put both of your LinkedIn so people can follow along right in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for being on, guys.
Kathleen, our first duo guest, tandem guest episode is in the books.
Yeah, and it was a really fun one. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun. They both bring different things to the table but they play off each other so well because they've been working together so well. They remind me of us.
Yeah. For those that don't know, you and I have worked together for a while, but did the same thing where it was like, hey, let's start something new. And of course, it's going to be Kathleen, right? Because when you find people that you work really well together, and like they were talking about too, you just know, you get that sense of like, I don't think Kathleen's going to go for this, right? And I love that they had that call out too. But also, I think it made for a really interesting episode because we had a culture piece with Marisa, but then also having Kelly, who is actively implementing, really kind of gave us those like nice tangible examples that I hope listeners really found some value in too.
Yeah, me too. And like, I was blown away by the 86% of their GMs started as crew members, right? That's a huge number.
Yeah.
And one of my questions was actually going to be like, they had posted about that recently. How did that come about? How did that happen? And they explained it before I even got the chance to ask, because they would put the details of explaining how they set things up and implement them. And they are so involved in, or like they said, the Terry's number one goal is to support their crew. Right? I love that as kind of like a slogan that they have almost.
Yeah.
Culture slogan.
Agreed, right? And it's one of those things where it's clearly on the outside, you might be tempted to think, oh, that's just like something that happened, like the promotion rate. Versus once we got into it, it's really clear that there's a lot of intention that has gone into that already. And then we got to see how they're thinking about that when they're approaching something like an LMS. And the vision to recognize, if we want to continue to train folks to be able to level up into management, it's not just tangible in restaurant skills that they might need, right? We're going to help the whole human.
Yeah.
And I just love that example.
Which is so important. I don't think the restaurant industry focuses on it enough, because the restaurant industry is typically like long hours, you're working on the weekends. It's like, almost the opposite of a work-life balance and focusing on the individual. It's like you show up and you're here, right? So yeah, I love that they did that. It is hard to distill it into a shifting question. Were you able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I was bouncing around a little, but I have one that I think is new too, right? Sometimes we might repeat them a little bit, but
Yeah.
Kelly actually mentioned the RFP process. And I think you and I were both maybe briefly worried, I guess might be the word. I was worried that I don't know how I'm going to tie this back to culture, but then she completely
Oh
did.
yeah.
And I thought there were two things she mentioned, right? Like that they had a philosophy on training clearly
Mhm.
defined, and then designed what they wanted ahead of time. And so my question is for anyone who is about to go into an RFP process, or maybe you're not calling it an RFP, request for proposal, maybe if you are looking at vendors for some problem you're trying to solve in your HR ecosystem, have you already thought about like what is your actual philosophy on that
Yeah.
piece, whether it's hiring or payroll or training? What is your philosophy? And then have you designed the pieces that you actually want? Because Kathleen, you and I are vendors in this space, and it's pretty easy for us to, if folks don't have a clear vision, like we will tell them how we think what we think are the best practices, but it's kind of you gotta have a clear vision for your company of whether
Mhm.
that resonates,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
that was
Yep.
kind of my question. Did I ask it as a question? I think I
You
did.
did. You
Right.
did.
Okay.
This time you did.
I lost myself there for a little, but anyway.
No, I absolutely love that question. It is so important and a really great reminder that I don't think people talk about enough or get reminded of enough that like before you are looking at vendors, you really got to figure it out. Or else, like Kelly alluded to, or else you can really go in different directions and just get sold like something that has nothing to do with what you wanted in the first place because it just was pretty and it looked nice. And a lot of these larger vendors, like they're not gonna make sure it's what is exactly you need. They're just gonna show the pretty things, right? And say, this is what you need, even though it really might not be. And we've been in those RFP processes and we talk to friends in the industry that have been kind of duped by that stuff. And we know we go into things with a very clear intention. I'm like, how do you guys, I think we aligned on that with Kelly, of we go into things thinking, how do you guys want to set things up? And can we make our system work for you? But not everyone does that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Touche. Yeah. And as you mentioned, it was a hard one to come up with some questions, maybe. Kathleen, did you come up with one as well?
I did. Marissa spoke about putting processes in place to make life easier for general managers. And I think that in general is just super important. So, my question is when you're putting processes in place, are you putting things in place just to have a system to save managers time or to actually make their life easier? Right? Because I think those can be three different things. And I think if a lot of the time people will just look at the time savings and not look at the other making life easier things that a technology could do for them or a process could do for a manager. So really looking at it through a lens of like, how is this going to change the manager's life? And if it's not, then is this the right system for me?
Yeah, I love that. I think it'd be so easy, especially for folks like Marissa and Kelly who have come from very big organizations. You come into a smaller organization again, and many of us would default to, oh, they don't have X, Y, Z, A, B, C. So we're going to put all of these things in place. But I love that you mentioned that call out of, is it actually saving time? Because a perfect example is, yeah, okay, payroll may be manual, but maybe the managers have been doing it for so long that it doesn't take that much time and they do it in a off time. So it's not really a time. We really have to meet the company where it's at and really understand, is this actually making someone's life easier? Or we're just going to add more tools, more things that they have to, more mental burden, right?
Mental burden. Yes, absolutely. And like you mentioned, the timing of when you implement it is really important because if that manager is not ready to then to be using something, to take on the learning of a new system, to take on all of that, they're not actually going to use it. It's
Exactly.
whole thing.
Exactly.
Gotta
Yeah.
think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost, what you don't do, what you choose not to do is just as important as what you do implement when you're coming into a role like that, especially at that stage where you're like, okay, we need to start to like grow up as a company, put more processes in place, put a little technology, but you can very easily go overboard and swing in the opposite direction, right?
And Marissa and Kelly are great examples of being intentional about it, which I think was a really great theme throughout, and theme of kind of their culture and company too.
Agreed. That was a good one, Kathleen.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. We'll put all the information for people to learn more about Marissa and Kelly and P. Terry's and follow along.
Yeah. And until next time, thanks for coming to work with us.
Bye for now.